intersection is?
Not without a street sign, no.
Okay. Go ahead. Mark this as People's 50.
Right, 50.
Yes. Can you zoom in on the street sign, John? How good's your eyesight?
I can see it says Bundy Drive.
Yeah. Can you make that can you make the sign a little clearer? I can't look.
Before, not now.
There we go. All right. Okay, okay. We get it. Okay. Can we back up now? Show the intersection. Thank you. Can you tell us now where where those two cars are and the crime scene tape, sir?
That would be Bundy and Dorothy.
All right. Now this.
I'm sorry, excuse me. I'm going to release the video on some of these. Let me know if anything sensitive comes up.
Okay. Now the view that we have right now, is it looking in a westerly direction if you were standing on Dorothy?
Yes, it is.
The view that we had before, People's, that was marked as People's 49. Can you tell us if that was a view looking from south to north from the on Bundy?
I was looking north.
Can we go back to that now?
Go back to the other one.
Thanks. All right. Now does that depict also the, it would be the west side of Bundy?
Yes, I don't think this is the picture when Bundy was closed down. This, it looks to me like after we made the crime scene smaller, just 3 houses. It doesn't look like, this is Bundy Drive, but it's not Bundy and Dorothy.
The corner of Bundy and Dorothy, is that the corner that you all walked around?
Yes,
Okay. And that was with Sergeant Rossi and Sergeant Kuhn?
that's correct.
When you walked down that sidewalk, sir, down Bundy, around the corner of Dorothy and onto Dorothy, did you notice anything unusual on the sidewalk?
Just bloody paw prints.
At some point, did they fade out?
Yes.
And so then what path did you take with Sergeant Rossi and Sergeant Kuhn?
We went Bundy to Dorothy, Dorothy to the mouth of the alley, and then just walked through up to 875.
I'll show you another photograph, sir. People's 51. That's at this be marked People's 51. Sir, can you tell us what location's depicted here again?
That is Bundy and Dorothy.
That is Bundy and Dorothy?
Yes.
Okay. And that's the, in the left-hand corner where you see the police car. Would that be the corner that you walked around?
That's correct.
And you took them up the alley and into the rear area, through the rear driveway area?
Right.
And did you point out the evidence that you've described to us earlier, the blood drops and the change?
Yes, I did.
Were there any bloody shoe prints out on that rear driveway?
No.
And did you take them up, take Sergeant Rossi and Sergeant Kuhn through the rear gate?
Yes, I did.
That rear gate that we see.
I believe it's just Sergeant Rossi and myself.
It was just Sergeant Rossi and yourself at that point?
I believe. I'm not sure.
On People's 48, the blood trail. In F, you see the rear gate,
Yes.
and that's the gate that leads out to the driveway.
That's correct.
When You went in through that rear gate with Sergeant Rossi. Were there any bloody shoe prints at that, at the end of the walkway just by that rear gate?
No.
How far did you walk with Sergeant Rossi?
I say about halfway. And we,
Halfway down the walkway?
yes.
So you did not take him all the way up to the front door?
No, I didn't.
As you walked him halfway up the walkway, were you using your flashlight?
Yes.
And were you pointing out what you were able to see?
Yes.
Did you point out any blood drops to him?
Yes, I did.
And where did you point them out?
This has been covered. It's been asked and answered.
Overruled.
It's covered.
Overruled.
Just from the rear gate up to where the what appeared to be footprints started again, and we stopped there.
So the footprints led from the bodies of the victims in the direction of towards the rear gate?
Question. Can we put your object the phone, please?
Yes, with court board, please. All right, thank you, counsel. Mrs. Clark, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Okay, with reference to those footprints, the bloody shoe prints that you saw leading away from the body of the victims towards the rear gate. When you first walked down that walkway after you exited the front door of the condominium going towards the rear gate, did you happen to notice whether the shoe prints continued all the way to the rear gate or not?
No, they didn't. They faded out.
They faded out?
Yes.
At what point?
I believe it was after the second landing, going down the stairs from the second landing, they faded.
Was that about halfway?
Yes.
Halfway down before you got to the rear gate?
Yes.
So when you took Sergeant Rossi in through the rear gate, you took him up as far as the last bloody shoe print?
That's correct.
And then what happened?
We turned around and went back out, and we returned to the front on Bundy.
Now again, when you turned around and went back out, you were using your flashlight to see what was on the walkway?
That's correct.
Did you avoid the blood drops
Yes.
at that point that you were walking back with him? There were no more bloody shoe prints.
No, there weren't.
And did those shoe prints appear to get lighter and lighter as you went farther down the walkway toward the rear gate?
From the front?
Yes.
Yes.
Overruled. But he's already testified that it faded out.
All right. After you exited the rear gate with Sergeant Rossi, what happened next?
We returned to the front on Bundy.
And where did you stay?
In the street.
Not on the sidewalk?
No.
And what happened next?
Detective Phillips and Furman arrived.
Okay. It's Detective Ron Phillips and Detective Mark Furman that arrived?
That's correct.
And about what time was it when they arrived?
I really don't know. I would only be guessing. I don't.
Was it like a couple hours after you first got there?
Yes.
And where did they pull up to? Where did you first see them?
They parked on the southeast corner of Bundy and Dorothy. They parked on Dorothy.
Now, at this point, who was already at the location? Which people that you saw?
So myself and my partner.
Officer Terrazas?
That's correct. Officer McGowan, Officer Wally. But they had gone up to Gorham and Dorothy and blocked traffic. Sergeant Kuhn was there, Sergeant Rossi, Officer Chavez and Cummings, Officer Glorioso and Ziegler, and Officer Aston. I don't know who his partner was.
Gonzalez?
Yes, Officer Gonzalez.
And were these people all guarding the perimeter?
Sustain or phrase question.
What were these people doing?
Officer Cummings was maintaining control of the crime scene log, who arrived and who left. Officer Gonzalez and Aston were knocking on the neighbors' doors, see if they heard or saw anything. I guess Officer Terrazas was in the back, guarding the back.
Guarding the back?
That's correct. Officer Sanchez was guarding the front with Sergeant Kuhn. And I believe Glorioso and Ziegler were also knocking on doors.
And at that point, and Sergeant Rossi was there as well?
Sergeant Rossi with me, yes.
And after all those people were there, about 2 hours after you got to the scene, Detectives Ron Phillips and Mark Furman arrived?
That's correct.
What happened when they arrived?
They met with Sergeant Rossi, Sergeant Kuhn, and myself. We went over what we had. Detective Furman, Phillips, Sergeant Kuhn, and I approached the front on the grass. I showed them the crime scene we had in the front.
All right, now, excuse me, let me stop you there, sir. When you say you approached the crime scene, on the grass, was that the same route that you described for us before? To the left of the walkway as you face it?
That's correct. It's to the left of the plants on the walkway.
Cut the feed run. All right, now shown in, this is People's 43, 43B. Once again, is that to the left of the walkway shown there?
That's correct.
And you took that same path as you did before?
No, there's grass to the left of this, and we walked in the grass.
You're gesturing over to the left-hand side of the photograph?
That's correct.
Yes. All right. Now, did you take them all the way up to the call box that you described earlier?
No, we stayed in the grass to the left of the foliage.
Okay. And at this point, who was standing on the grass with you?
It's Detective Furman, Detective Phillips, I believe Sergeant Kuhn, and myself.
Did you have your flashlight?
Yes,
So it was about 2:30 in the morning at this point?
I believe. I'm not sure what time it was.
And what did you show them?
I showed them the two bodies, the evidence that I had seen, the envelope, the hat, the glove.
And they all observed it from that position on the grass?
That's correct.
What did you do next?
We then, I took them around to the neighbor's yard, and I showed them where the pager was laying in the body of Mr. Goldman.
So you took them around to the side that's shown in People's, excuse me, 43A, outside this gated area,
That's correct.
and you let them see,
That's the
excuse me,
next.
that's 47.
I'm going to strike that.
People's 47.
Overwhelmed.
People's 47A, around the outside of that gate.
That's correct.
What'd you do after that?
Then the two detectives, I believe both sergeants and myself, walked around down Bunny to Dorothy, Dorothy to the rear alley, and went to the rear of the residence.
Okay, the same path that you took before.
That's correct.
I'm going to ask that the photograph we're going to pull up now in the Elmo is People's 52.
Right, 52.
Showing you People's 52, sir. Do you recognize what's being shown in that photograph?
Yes, I do.
What's that?
That's the rear of 875 and the Jeep that was in the driveway.
Now, when you first got to the location shortly after midnight, the first time you went back to the rear area that's shown in People's 52, was the Jeep in that position?
Yes,
Outside the garage?
yes,
But the garage door was closed?
that's correct.
So you came around the corner of Dorothy and Bundy and up the alley with
right.
Detectives Phillips, Furman, and Sergeant Kuhn?
And Sergeant Rossi.
And Sergeant Rossi. So it was 5 of you.
Right.
All right. And where did you go?
We went to the driveway, showed him the door that was ajar in the Jeep, the change and the blood on the driveway. I was showing Detective Furman the blood that was on the gate.
The rear gate?
That's correct. And Sergeant Rossi and Detective Phillips walked down the walkway, probably halfway.
Photographs that has to be marked as People's 53,
All right, People's 53 chart with photos.
and they will be labeled.
Thank you.
Can you, let you look at that for a minute. Orient yourself. Everybody can see that? You see what's, first of all, in general, what location's shown on People's 53?
That's the rear gate of 875 Bundy.
Now, what will be labeled as photograph 53A, is this taken from inside or outside the gate?
That's inside the gate.
So that would be so you're taking that's from inside the gate and you're facing out towards the alley?
That's correct.
Let you use this. Can you tell us if you see where you saw blood drops on the rear gate on the night of June the 12th?
There was blood at the bottom. There was blood on this latch. There was blood at the top. And my partner directed my attention to blood on the outside and the grating.
And do you see that blood on, designated by some kind of marker in what will be labeled as 53E?
Which one is
Let's see. This one is A, second photograph. Here showing the blood drops you've indicated at the bottom rung as B, closer up in C, and closer up in D. In E and F, can you tell us what's shown there?
This is the outside of the rear gate, and that would be where the blood was.
And a closer up view of that in F?
That's correct.
Your Honor, if I may, I'm going to ask to show this to the rest of the jury.
Yes.
Want me to come with you?
You want to go and point it out again, sir? 247?
This would be the interior of the rear gate. This will be blood on the bottom rung on the inside of the gate. This is a closer up picture of blood on the bottom. This is even closer. This is the outside of the rear gate. The blood would be on the grating, and this is a close-up picture of the blood on the grating.
Thank you, sir. All right, so then after you all went inside the rear gate, what happened next?
Well, Detective Furman and I went to the rear gate. We didn't go inside. And Sergeant Rossi and Detective Phillips went about halfway down the walk.
So you stayed outside the rear gate with Detective Furman?
That's correct.
And what did you do there?
I showed him the blood on the rear gate and, like I said, the blood in the driveway.
What happened after that?
Detective Phillips and Sergeant Rossi came out of the walkway, through the rear gate, and Detective Furman, Phillips, and I entered the house through the garage.
All right, by that time, the garage was already open?
That's correct.
Okay. And so how many of you walked in through the garage?
3 of us.
And that was you and Detective
Furman,
Phillips and
Phillips.
Detective Furman. What did you do inside the house?
As soon as we entered the house from the garage, I showed him the ice cream and the spoon was on the ground. We did a quick walk through the house, and then we went out to the front landing.
Had you noticed when you first were inside the house that the spoon that was in that ice cream cup was on the ground?
Yes.
What did it look like to you?
It looked like the ice cream had melted and the spoon had fell on the floor. It was directly underneath the ice cream.
Where did you walk them through inside the house?
We looked at the main level and went up. I showed them the kids' bedrooms and the master bedroom. We went out on the, like I said, the workout area and looked down into the living room. And we came back down and went out to the front landing.
And when you came out onto the front landing, were you able to see both of the victims there?
Yes.
Now I have here a board that's been shown to council. Ask that this be marked as People's 54.
54.
You able to see People's 54, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
If you can see the diagram with the outlines of the bodies in yellow, can you tell us if that is the relative position of the bodies to each other at the crime scene that you found?
Yes.
Now, if you look here,
I think her head was actually closer to the stairs, though.
closer back to the stairs.
Right.
Can you describe the Can you describe for us, sir, the area where the bodies were found in terms of space, in terms of how large that space is?
I would estimate from the north fence to the foliage on the left of the walkway, probably 10 feet and maybe 6 feet long.
In other words, was that a fairly small enclosed area?
Yes.
So when you stood at the top of the landing, did you use your flashlight at that point?
Yes, I did.
And what did you do?
I pointed out the evidence that I had seen. I showed them the bloody footprints and the walkway, the 2 victims.
And did you show them the envelope, the cap, the glove?
Right.
You were able to see that from standing up on the landing?
Yes.
And what did you do after that?
They looked around, just standing there, they looked. And they looked at the steps that leading towards the rear. I mean, the bloody shoe prints leading towards the rear. Then we went back into the house, and I believe Sergeant Kuhn got a hold of Detective Phillips and told him that Lieutenant Spangler had arrived. Detective Furman and I stayed in the house, and Detective Phillips went out to meet with the lieutenant.
Excuse me, Your Honor, could we approach?
Sure.
All right, thank you, counsel. Mr. Cochran, if you like, you can just sit there. You're welcome. All right, Mr. Clark, you're just using diagrams, correct?
That's right.
There's nothing else that we're going to see on this?
That's right.
Okay.
Now, from your position at the top of the landing, were you able to point out all of the evidence you've described to us?
Yes,
And is that where the detectives stayed by at the top of the landing at that point?
that's correct.
And then you indicated that they went where?
They just stayed on the landing and looked at the shoe prints that continued westbound towards the rear.
And they looked at that from their vantage point at the top of the landing?
That's correct.
Where did they go after that?
I believe Lieutenant Spangler arrived. I don't remember if Sergeant Kuhn yelled to Phillips or got him on the radio to tell him he was here. But Furman and I went in the house, stayed in the kitchen, and Detective Phillips went out to meet the lieutenant.
All right. Do you know what route Detective Phillips took to exit the condominium?
He went through the house, down the stairs, and through the garage.
Okay, so he went out the back.
That's correct.
And you stayed inside the house with Detective Furman.
That's correct.
What were you doing inside the house?
Just standing in the kitchen, kind of looking around. I believe there was a jacket in there, a blue jean jacket. We were talking about if it was one of the victims.
And what happened next?
Detective Phillips and I believe he was accompanied by the lieutenant, came in the house. And I exited the rear and just stayed by my partner.
So Detective Phillips came back inside? And you mean, when you say inside, into the condominium?
Into the kitchen and met with Furman.
And when he came in and met with Detective Furman, you left?
That's correct.
And what route did you take to leave?
I went through the house, down the stairs, and out the garage.
And where did you go at that point?
I went out to the patrol car that was parked on the alley and just sat with my partner.
What were you doing?
Just maintaining security. We had been relieved by the detectives, so they assumed responsibility.
So at that point, you were just maintaining the security of the location in the rear of the condominium?
That's correct.
And that you stood in or outside the crime scene tape?
Outside.
Did anyone enter through the crime scene tape that was not authorized to do so while you were there?
No.
In either the front or the back?
No.
Did you ever go back, after you went out and stood in the rear alley area, did you ever go back into the crime scene again?
With a photographer.
Pardon?
With a photographer.
And when was that, sir?
In the back, it was probably 10 or 15 minutes after I'd been relieved by the detectives. And in the front, it was when it was starting to get daylight.
Now, in the back, was that, how long after your exiting the condominium did the photographer come and start taking pictures of the back?
I believe the photographer beat the detectives there. And I was in the back probably 20 minutes. He came back and started taking pictures.
Okay. And to your knowledge, had he taken pictures in the front yet, if you know?
I really don't know.
After he took pictures, did you show him where to take pictures in the back?
I showed him some blood, told him about the ice cream on the banister, and that's about it.
Did you show him the change and the blood drops on the rear driveway?
Yes, so he wouldn't step in it.
And did you, how long did you stay out there in the rear area, rear alley?
I would estimate till 5:30, around 5:30.
Okay.
Then we went to the front.
What did you do in the front of the location?
We opened Bundy up to vehicular traffic. So all we had was a crime scene from the house north, Nicole's house and the house south, and we sat in front of that crime scene.
Okay. So was anyone allowed to walk on the sidewalk in front of 875 South Bundy?
No,
Was anyone allowed to walk on the walkway at 875 South Bundy?
no.
So where did you stand in front of the location, sir?
We actually moved our vehicle and parked it right in front of 875, so the walkway wasn't visible from the street.
So you blocked the view.
That's correct.
And were you seated in your car or standing outside of it?
Seated, standing, it was depending on what time it was.
Was that done intentionally, blocking the view of the
Yes.
walkway, sir?
Yes.
Why?
So we didn't want passers-by to look down there and see what it was, and trying to keep the media out.
And by the time you came around to the front, was it starting to get light?
No, it was
Still dark?
still dark.
What did you do out front?
Like I said, maintained the security of the crime scene.
At some point, a photographer arrived?
Like,
Sustained.
Did you have contact with the photographer in the front of the location?
yes, I did.
And was it daylight by then?
I had talked to him earlier, but he hadn't taken any pictures of the front while I was there. And he came, it was just starting to get daylight, and he came and he took a couple pictures.
Okay. Now, was this the same photographer you'd contacted earlier at the rear of the location, the rear alley?
Yes, it was.
When he came to the front of the location and it was lighter, did you point anything out to him?
No, I didn't.
Did you see him taking pictures in that front area?
I saw Detective Furman. He was showing him the glove, and he took a picture of the glove.
Okay. He was pointing to it?
I believe he lifted up the leaves on the plant so he could see it better, and he took a picture of it.
Can you pull that one? I'm sorry. Is this the, I forgot the feed was ever on again.
Well, I assume somebody upstairs caught that.
This has not been previously marked, I think, so we should mark it as People's 54? 5? Thank you. Do you recognize the person in that photograph, sir?
Yes, I do.
Who's that?
It's Detective Furman and the victim.
Okay. And what's he pointing to?
It's pointing to the glove,
The glove and the cap?
the cap.
The ones that you saw when you arrived shortly after midnight.
That's correct.
So, let me ask you something. What's he wearing there, Detective Furman?
It's like a white suit shirt, pair of slacks.
No jacket.
No.
Now, in that particular photograph, you had said that the leaves of the plant kind of hung over that one glove and the ski cap,
That's correct.
and that actually you had to lift it up to see.
Right.
Now, at this point, the leaves are not lifted up. Is that correct?
I believe that's his left hand holding the leaves back and his right hand pointing to the...
Pull back a little bit, Jonathan.
Oh, never mind. That's the shoe of the victim.
The shoe of the victim, no. So he's just
My
pointing to it
mistake.
with his right hand.
That's correct.
Now, what time was it that you were relieved from this crime scene?
7:15.
At 7:15?
That's correct.
And how In relationship to that time that you left the crime scene, when did Detective Furman appear and point things out to the photographer?
I would say within 40 minutes. I'm not really sure. Within an hour.
So it was shortly before you left
That's
the
correct.
crime scene completely?
Right.
Do we need this photo anymore?
No, thank you, Your Honor. All right, now were you ever aware that detectives left the Bundy location?
Yes.
And you indicated, I believe, that you saw Detective Phillips and Detective Furman inside the condominium, and then you went outside and stayed in back.
That's right.
Where were you when the detectives left for another location?
In the front.
And at that point, sir, you had already come around to the front. You were standing guard there?
That's correct.
Oh, well, re-foundational, I assume.
Yes. Now, how long did you stay in the rear area?
Maybe an hour, hour and a half.
And while you were doing that, were other people guarding the front area?
As far as I know, yes. There should have been.
When you left the rear area to go to the front, did someone relieve you and maintain the guard in the back?
Yes.
And while you were standing in front, is that when the detectives left for another location?
Yes. Detective Phillips actually approached me. He gave me his cellular phone and said they were going to the Rockingham. They asked me directions to get there.
And did you assist him by giving directions?
Yes.
Were you familiar with that location?
Yes. That area, not that location.
You mean the Brentwood area up north of
Right.
Sunset? May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Certainly. Mr. Cochran?
Thank you, Rick.
You want to start now?
Well, I think we might as well use every minute.
Every precious minute.
Every precious minute we use, Your Honor. Can still say good morning,
Morning, sir.
Mr. Riske. You had been a police officer for how long on June 12th, 1994, when you responded to this location?
4 years, almost 2 months.
4 years, 2 months at that time.
Yes, sir.
And your partner officer was Officer Terrazas, is
That's
that correct?
correct.
And as between the two of you, who was the senior officer?
I was.
And he had been there less time than you had, LAPD.
Yeah, I believe he had 7 months in the street, 6
right.
months.
And you had worked the entire 4-year period of time in the West Los Angeles area, is that correct, sir?
No, sir.
Where had you started working when you first started?
Central,
Downtown?
downtown.
And how long prior to June 12th of 1994 had you been in West Los Angeles?
2 years, 8 months.
All right. And so that we get the chronology of the hierarchy there, you were a patrol person, is that correct?
That's correct.
And who was your immediate supervisor
That night,
on that night?
Sergeant Kuhn was the field supervisor.
Sergeant Kuhn?
That's correct.
And he's no relation to the other Sergeant Kuhn?
Not as far as I know.
All right. As far as you know. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. And above Sergeant Kuhn, who came next?
Watch commander was Sergeant Rossi.
All right. And he at some point responded to the location?
That's correct.
And above Sergeant Rossi was whom?
Just, that was it, area commander.
All right. What about Lieutenant Spangler? How did he fit in the hierarchy?
Lieutenant Spangler is a lieutenant of detectives of West LA.
All right. So he'd be above Rossi.
He's actually above Phillips and Furman.
All right. So as I understand how it works, you as the responding patrol officer worked at that scene for a period of time until such time as the detectives responded.
Right, until they take it over.
And the detectives, when they responded, that was Mark Furman and Detective Phillips, is that correct?
That's correct.
And it's your recollection they got there around 2:30 in the morning, isn't that correct?
I don't know what time they got there.
All right. Ms. Clark mentioned to you that it was about 2 hours or so after you arrived.
Right.
You don't quarrel with that, though, do you?
I would only be guessing, sir. I don't know. I didn't have the crime scene log.
All right. And if you were to see a log of when the officers got there, that would refresh your recollection, would it?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now let's start with you. You arrived there at about 12:13 a.m., is that correct?
That's correct.
And you arrived there within 4 minutes of the time that you received this 459 Prowler call at Miss Elsie Tistert's residence, is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And when you arrived there, you and your partner, Officer Terrazas, were the first officers there, is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, you described for Ms. Clark that when you were at the Los Angeles Police Academy that they kind of glossed over this crime scene maintenance and training, is that correct?
Right.
And much of what you've learned, you learned actually on the job once you actually got in the field, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Have you had any training in the sensitivity of DNA?
No.
You had any training with regard to polymerase chain reaction or so-called PCR?
No.
Had none of that at all?
No.
All right. Now, by the way, with regard to this crime scene, from the time that you arrived there at 12:13 to the time that you left at, was it 7:15?
That's correct.
So that we're clear, you then stayed there approximately 7 hours, is that right?
Right.
Did you see any officers out there with a videotape machine or a videotape camera videotaping this entire scene?
No.
You never saw anybody with a videotape at that time
Not that I recall.
while
no.
you were there?
Not that I recall.
You did, in fact, however, see a photographer at some point, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And the photographer that you saw, what was his name?
I really don't know.
With Rokar, if I use the name Rokar, would that refresh your recollection?
It wouldn't because I don't know his name.
You don't know his name?
I never.
All right. What time did you first see this photographer, sir?
I really don't know. I went to the front after a search in the alley, and I think he was there. I'm not sure.
Let's back up for a moment. You recall seeing him at the rear
That's right.
of the alley and taking some pictures, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And was this was after the detectives had arrived at about 2 or 2:30, isn't that
Right.
correct? So whatever pictures and what he was doing was under the direction of the detectives who had now taken over the scene, is that right?
That's correct.
You did not give him any directions as to what to take. It would have been done by the detectives, is that correct?
No, I just pointed out blood so he didn't step in it or disturb any evidence.
All right. Now, did you ever at any time see this photographer take any pictures of the interior of the residence at 875 South Bundy?
No, I didn't.
Did you ever see him take pictures of these candles that you described?
No.
Did he take any pictures of this ice cream, this melting ice cream that you described in your report? I'm asking if you ever saw it.
Overruled.
Did you ever see him take any pictures of this melting ice cream that you described?
No, I didn't.
And by the way, when we break for lunch, it's a good time to break for lunch when we're talking about ice cream, Your Honor, but let me just ask him, with regard to this ice cream, when you first saw this ice cream, you described the ice cream as a bowl of melting ice cream, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
It wasn't melted at that point, was it?
In my opinion, no. It was melting. It was
melting, as you said.
half and half.
All right. So it was still melting, right?
That's correct.
Okay. What kind of ice cream was that? You recall?
What kind of ice cream?
Yeah. Was it vanilla, strawberry, chocolate? What was it?
I don't know.
All right. And you don't have any pictures to this day to tell us, do you?
No.
In other words, would you agree with me that the best evidence of the condition of that ice cream when you first saw it on that night would be a picture of how it looked? Isn't that correct?
A picture of when I actually saw it, yes.
Yeah, when you saw it, yes. We don't have that, do we?
Not that I know of.
Okay, what kind of container of ice cream was this?
It was like a cardboard Ben & Jerry's container.
Ben & Jerry's?
Ben & Jerry's.
Container.
Right.
Is that correct? And this ice cream that you saw was inside the residence, is that correct?
Right.
And where was it in relation to that residence? Was it near the rear?
It was on a banister right before the entrance to the garage from the house.
And it was near the back, and when you came and you took the children out that way, you'd pass right by that banister, is that correct?
That's correct.
And when you first saw this ice cream, what time was it when you first saw that ice cream, the melting ice cream?
I would estimate 12:35, 12:40.
So at that time, at 12:40, this melting ice cream in the Ben & Jerry's container had not fully melted, right?
Not in my opinion, no.
All right. It's a good point now, Your Honor, the ice cream, and we'll pick up there after lunch.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the lunch hour. Please remember my admonition to you, don't discuss the case amongst yourselves. Form any opinions about the case. Allow anybody to contact you regarding the case. Let's have it quiet in the courtroom, please. Don't conduct any deliberations till the matter has been submitted to you, and we will see you back here at 1:30. Officer Riske, you're ordered not to discuss your testimony with anybody other than the lawyers in the case. You're ordered to return here at 1:30 sharp. All right? We'll stand in recess 1:30. Thank you, counsel.